Hey guys, my name's Alisha and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be giving you guys some recommendations for books that are by or about Muslims because it is Ramadan Mubarak. But basically I thought what better time than now to give recommendations for great Muslim books. If you don't know, Ramadan is basically a holy month where Muslims across the world fast from sunrise to sunset without food or water. And it's just a time to get closer to God and cleanse your soul and cleanse your body, and it's a big deal for Muslims. And so yeah, I thought what better time than now to give these recommendations. So let's get into it. So first up, I have one of my favorite Muslim books, and that is Love from A to Z by S.K. Ali. So this is a kind of YA romance contemporary book, and it is following a young girl who is going to school in America, and she has this kind of Islamophobic encounter with her professor. And so after, kind of getting in trouble with her teacher, she is sent to Qatar during her spring break to spend some time with some family there. And so on the flight there, she meets this boy named Adam, and they kind of strike this friendship that turns into a romance. And so it's about that romance, but it's also about some other issues, and there's a lot of great discussions. And overall, I think this book is just a really fun time and has really great representation, and it has a really good romance with Muslims. So it's like a halal romance. So it just made it a really different and nice kind of book to read. So I highly recommend this one. So then I have a book that I haven't actually read yet, but it is Saints and Misfits by S.K. Ali, so the same author of Love from A to Z. And this book I think is it's also a YA contemporary. I'm not sure how much romance is in this one, but it's basically about this young girl who is going through life trying to figure out, it's I guess a bit of a coming of age story, but she kind of categorizes people into three categories: saints, misfits, and monsters. And so it is about this young girl being a Muslim and growing up as a Muslim and dealing with family and relationships and just growing up. So yeah, I'm really excited to read this one soon. Then I have two books from the same author, and that is Tara Mafi, and the two books are A Very Large Expanse of Sea and An Emotion of Great Delight. So both of these books are sort of dealing with Islamophobia and discrimination. This book takes place pretty recently after 9/11 and is following a young Muslim hijabi girl. And then this one is dealing with when America kind of started the war with Iraq. And so there's, again, a lot of Islamophobia and issues going around. Both of these books are pretty heavy and definitely have some trigger warnings. This book I would say is actually much more emotional because it's dealing with grief and loss and family members dying. And then this book is definitely more, I think, about the actual Islamophobia and discrimination that Muslims face. Both of them I would say do fall into some tropes that I feel like books about Muslims fall into, which is that they are very much following Muslim trauma and Muslim pain and only dealing with Islamophobia and that kind of thing. I do think most of the representation in these books is really good, so I am not necessarily against that, but they both actually do fall into another trope of the white savior complex. So both of the main characters in these books end up with white boys, and that is a whole nother discussion. So if you're not really into that, then that's fine. I still think these have good representation and are very well written, but they may not be for all Muslims if you aren't okay with some of those things. So next up, I have The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali, and this is a really beautiful historical fiction book. It is sort of like a love story, a romance. It is following these two young kids in Tehran, Iran, as they kind of fall in love on the streets of Iran. They go to the stationery shop where the owner kind of helps them to communicate with each other, because at the time they weren't really allowed to have girls and guys really being friendly and dating and things like that. So we follow them as they're young kids falling in love, but due to certain circumstances they aren't really able to be together and get married, and so they both end up immigrating to America. And then we're following them as they go through their lives kind of without each other, but always loving each other and remembering each other, until they are about 60 years old, I think, and they end up meeting again in America. And so this was just such a emotional and sad but also hopeful and beautiful story, and I really love the fact that like this has Muslim characters, or at least is written by a Muslim author, but the fact that they are Muslim is not like central to the story. It's just a part of them, and I do think that like sometimes, as I was saying with the Tara Mafi books, the fact that characters are Muslim, a lot of stories just focus on the negative parts, I guess, of being a Muslim, as in like the Islamophobia and discrimination and hate and all of those things. But I do like stories like this where it's just, you know, being Muslim is just another part of their identity. It's not, you know, a huge thing, and it's not only focused on the bad parts, I guess, of what comes with being a Muslim. So yeah, really love this book, and it's really heartwarming and emotional and sad but beautiful and so great, so great. So next up, I have a pretty popular series, and that is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. And this is another case where these books are by a Muslim author, but you know, that Muslim identity is not a central focus of the story. I'm not actually sure even if the characters in these books are ever called Muslim, or you know, if that's part of the story, but they are brown characters and they are written by a Muslim author. The series takes place in a very kind of violent and cutthroat setting. It is ancient Roman inspired, and basically it is following this young girl whose family, I believe, gets killed, and so she's kind of recruited to go undercover into this military training academy of the kind of martial empire, who are the kind of violent leaders of the society. And so she is sent undercover to kind of find out what's going on and take them down. But while she's there, she ends up meeting this boy who is training in this academy, but is not necessarily believes in the values of the academy and what he's been taught. And so it's about these two characters and how they are on kind of different sides, but come together to help one another and, you know, kind of help the society. And so I've read the first book in the series and I really did like it. And again, it's another book, but it's by a Muslim author, and it's just about so much more than that identity. And then next I have another book by the same author, and that's All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. I haven't read this book yet, but I've heard nothing but great things about it, and I'm so excited to read it. It's in two timelines. The first timeline, we're following two characters who are newly married and have a lot to deal with, and due to certain circumstances they're forced to move to America. And then we're following another timeline of one of their children and another character who are best friends, but due to certain things end up having a fallout, and kind of how these friends need each other. So this is a story about like family and forgiveness and love and loss, and just a generational story. So I am very excited to read this. Like I said, I've heard so many great things, and I've heard that I'm gonna like cry my eyes out. So yeah, really excited about this. And I've also heard it has really great Muslim representation, which is what we're here for. So yeah, really excited about this one. So then I have a really cute story, and that is Salaam with Love by Sarah Sharif Beg. And this is a story that is taking place during Ramadan, and it is following a young girl as she finds out more about herself and her identity, as well as her faith and relationships and friendships. And I think is just a really sweet and cute book that also has really great representation. And I haven't really read any books that actually take place during Ramadan, so I think this will be really fun and relatable. So then I have Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Iyamidi. And this is a Muslim author, but this is another book that actually, I believe nowhere does it say that these characters are Muslim. This is a really great YA thriller, and it is sort of a Gossip Girl meets Get Out, and it was just a really fun time, very fast-paced and very intriguing and engaging, and I absolutely love this book. We're following two Black students at this kind of elite private school, where suddenly both these students start getting like targeted by this anonymous texter who is threatening to expose their secrets. And so we're following these two students as they are sort of dealing with this whole situation, while also being like the only Black people at this predominantly white school. And yeah, I think Gossip Girl meets Get Out is just a perfect way to kind of summarize this book. Also, like the vibes of this book are really great. And then lastly, I have You Truly Assumed by Layla Sabrine. So this is a new release. I believe it came out in like February, and it is following three Black Muslims as they are sort of dealing with the aftermath of a terrorist attack, which everyone kind of just assumes is a Muslim terrorist attack, but it turns out the person wasn't a Muslim. But these three girls are all kind of in their own way dealing with the aftermath of the situation, and again, like the increased Islamophobia, one of these girls ends up starting like this blog where she talks about how you know, how she's dealing with this whole situation, as well as the fact that she is a Black Muslim, which I definitely think that is a group of people who are a minority in the kind of representation of Muslims. I think, you know, I think it's really important to have more voices and more representation of all the different types of Muslims, because being a Muslim, you know, there are things that you can relate to, but also, you know, things about culture and race and ethnicity and all of those things, you know, make you have a different experience. So yeah, I think this is a really great story and a really great message, and I think it does a pretty good job of like actual representation of Muslims. So those are all the books I have for you today that I'm recommending. These are all either books that I have read or have heard a lot of great things about, and I hope you enjoy these. If you've read any of these books or if you have any other recommendations, please let me know. I'm really, you know, excited about the increased amount of books by and about Muslims, because I think it's really important just to have that representation and, you know, these stories out there. As I was saying before, I do think it's also really important to like not only tell these very specific and stereotype stories about the Muslim experience, you know, about just dealing with Islamophobia or just like the trauma and pain that comes with, I guess, like being a Muslim, but also just, you know, regular stories about Muslims who are just going about their regular life, but also, you know, incorporating their faith and their traditions and culture. So yeah, I'm really hoping for more of these kinds of stories, and I hope you guys like this video, and I'll see you next time.